Yeah, just oh, thank you, Joy.
Got it.
So, welcome to the January 2024 Advocacy in Action webinar. Happy New Year. Great to be in 2024. These slides are kind of going to be an update on where we're at with the Medicare O&P Patient-Centered Care Act in Congress. This is the second year of the two-year legislative session, and it's an election year as well. So there's a lot going on, but the bill has been picking up some momentum and really excited to kind of have that going on. So I'll dive right into what's happening. So just to go over the bill provisions, there are three total provisions of the Medicare O&P Patient-Centered Care Act in this Congress. The first is a prohibition of drop shipping for custom orthoses. This is a really big kind of cost saving provision and fraud prevention provision. So we're hoping that with this, there will be, a significant cost savings. And I'll get into it a little bit later, but we have found that this bill will save us, the Medicare system, quite a bit of money. The second provision, it exempts practitioners from requiring a competitive bidding license to provide off-the-shelf orthoses. This one is essentially a method of removing barriers to care for folks. So essentially right now, as you probably know, if a patient with a prosthesis on one side of their body needs an off-the-shelf orthosis on the other side of their body, if their practitioner doesn't have a competitive bidding license, they'd have to send their patient, across town, across the county, to another practitioner that does have a license in order to receive that off-the-shelf orthosis. And that just adds another barrier to care, increased travel time, things like that, especially for folks who already inherently have mobility issues. And then the third provision of the bill, which is kind of the new provision, the other two having been carried over from the previous Congress, it's a removal of reasonable useful lifetime restrictions for custom orthoses. Right now, there's a lifetime of about 3 to 5 years for, custom orthoses where you cannot get a replacement within that time period. And this doesn't take into account things like changes to a patient's condition or changes to their bodies. So in order to, help people get the care that they need in a timely manner, we'd like to remove these restrictions based on having proper documentation, of course, that we're preventing fraud. But right now, the bill has been introduced in the House. It's HR 4315. And in the Senate, we are working to introduce the bill. More on that in a couple of slides, but that is our kind of main objective, along with moving the bill through the House, is to get it introduced in the Senate. So I can kind of take you through the advocacy timeline of what's been happening. In May of last year, advocates at AOPA's Policy Forum showed support for the bill. It hadn't been introduced in this time, but we were able to get a lot of support for the provisions of the bill, talk about O&P as a whole, and get a lot of attention for the field from members of Congress. And here are a couple of pictures of folks on the Hill, walking around, seeing members, things of that nature. It's a really good time. The Policy Forum this year is going to be April 14th through 16th. So I'd definitely recommend checking that out if you're interested in coming over to DC and checking out the Capitol. It's a really fun experience. So in June, following the Policy Forum, HR 4315 was introduced in the House by Representative G.T. Thompson. This is also a bill that has a few original co-sponsors, which I can get to in a little bit, but that's Mike Thompson, Brett Guthrie, Andrew Craig, and then Pete Sessions also actually introduced the bill as an original co-sponsor. Essentially, G.T. Thompson was walking down on the floor of the House to kind of drop the bill off to pass it, and Pete Sessions, asked to be added on at the last second. So we're really excited that we had that support right from the get-go. So in August, Representative Thompson, he sent what's called a Dear Colleague letter to his fellow House members. And these are essentially kind of persuasive letters of support that members of Congress send to each other to urge them to co-sponsor legislation, to let them know about political developments that they're interested in, things like that. And that was really helpful to get even more attention to the bill. And then in September, um, Representative Thompson also provided testimony in support of the bill during what are known as member day hearings. And essentially, these are hearings that specific committees host where any member of Congress can walk in and present bills that they support, and that they've sponsored. Basically, this isn't typically something that's done. Typically, the chair of the committee brings forth legislation that they would like to kind of consider in committee. But during the member days, members can kind of do what they wish and bring the bills that they care about to the committees that they will be heard in eventually. And so he did this for Energy and Commerce and Ways and Means, which are the two committees of jurisdiction, which essentially means that as the bill moves through the legislative process, it'll first be heard in Energy and Commerce, and then if it's voted out and supported by most members, it'll go to Ways and Means. And this is kind of a new development. In November of last year, we received an independent fiscal analysis that we've been working on for a couple of months. And it showed that HR 4315 will save the Medicare program $60 million over the course of 10 years in fraud, waste, and abuse prevention, mostly from that first provision that I referred to earlier. And you can see here kind of a breakdown of these costs, that essentially the exemption from reasonable useful lifetime restrictions for custom orthoses will cost the Medicare program about $13 million. That's the first line. And then you can see $73 million worth of savings from the drop shipping provision for a total savings of $60 million. And we're really excited about this. It's been helpful in talking with legislators. A lot of them are very fiscally minded, especially more conservative legislators. And the Energy and Commerce Committee specifically, they have kind of noted that they would like to make sure that any of the bills that they're considering or passing are revenue neutral or cost savers. So they don't want to add to the budget. And this would be an example of something that would save the Medicare program money. So it's been really helpful to gain support. And speaking of which, from October of 2023 to right now, we've been scheduling meetings with dozens of staffers from both the Ways and Means and Energy and Commerce health subcommittees to support HR 4315. I just put, I think, 4 or 5 meetings with Ways and Means staffers on the calendar for some colleagues and I just earlier today. And this is a picture of, I believe this is Rayburn House Office Building. This is one of the offices in DC, right by the Capitol, where the members of Congress and their staff kind of do a lot of their work when they're not in the actual Capitol building itself voting. This is where folks in that attend policy forum will be, walking the halls. There are a few other office buildings as well, but this on the right, this picture of the hallway, that's just the very typical House office building or congressional office building hallway with the flags on either side. It's kind of fun to walk around and see the staff and members just milling about doing their thing. But yeah, this has been really helpful in garnering support to make sure that we're reaching out to all the staffers on the committees that will hear the bill eventually. So I can go into a little bit about co-sponsor statistics. These are essentially members of Congress who have signed on to support the bill in an official capacity. And the more co-sponsors, the better. Ideally, you'd have every single member of the House co-sponsor the House version of a bill, and every single senator co-sponsor the Senate version. But that's a little bit tough to do depending on the political environment, especially with how polarizing things are these days. But as of right now, we have our one primary sponsor who, wrote and introduced the bill. That's Congressman Thompson. And then we have the four original co-sponsors that I mentioned earlier, who basically showed their support for the bill before it was actually introduced. Then on top of that, we have 29 additional co-sponsors. I think I might have done my math wrong on that one, actually. I think we have 28 additional co-sponsors. But essentially, what the point is this bill, it's garnered, about 30 co-sponsors in 7 months, in a little more than half a year. In the last Congress, the last version of this bill, HR 1990, it reached the same amount of co-sponsors in about 3 times the length of time. So basically what I'm trying to say is it's the momentum has been a lot quicker this time around. And we're hoping that with the meetings that we've been scheduling lately, that we'll get even more support for the bill over time. So we have some statistics, some more kind of visualizations to show you the level of support that's been going on only in the past couple of months. These are the co-sponsors as of October 2023. And as you can see, you have 8 of these co-sponsors are in the committees of jurisdiction for the bill, Energy and Commerce or Ways and Means. So 8 out of 22 as of October 2023, that is. So now we have, as of January 2024, as of this month, we now have 34 total supporters. I think that's where I got it. We have 33 co-sponsors plus GT Thompson is the original co-sponsor. I knew I had it right. Oh my gosh. But basically now we have 16 out of 34 current sponsors and co-sponsors that sit on committees of jurisdiction. So whereas a couple months ago, we had about 1/3 of the members that co-sponsor the bill sitting on committees of jurisdiction. Now we're at about half. So that's definitely a larger proportion of kind of key decision makers that are supporting this bill at the moment. And I can also visualize this with a map. This is, as of, again, October 2023, we had 16 states plus DC represented by co-sponsors. And then just a few months later, we now have 22 states and DC represented by co-sponsors. And so we've added, a pretty significant portion in a geographic sense of the country supporting the bill in Capitol Hill. So that's the House side of things. In the Senate, we have Senator Mark Warner, who's committed to introducing the bill. And then we have some original co-sponsors that are a few confirmed, a few potential. Our confirmed co-sponsor is Senator Steve Daines of Montana. And then we also have Senators Duckworth, Cassidy, Cornyn, Grassley, and Thune as potential Senate original co-sponsors. I'd also add Marsha Blackburn to that list as well. Right now, we have one of Senator Warner's staffers, Colleen Wynn. She's received the final kind of green light from Senator Warner, and she's currently exploring the timeline for receiving technical assistance from Medicare before introduction. So what that means is technical assistance is kind of getting into the details and the actual mechanisms by which a bill is kind of implemented. And so it's better to get that beforehand in some cases, just to make sure that the bill doesn't have any issues with how it's actually going to be carried out before it's introduced. And sometimes that's helpful to do it beforehand, but sometimes it's also helpful to kind of work on that on the post-introduction side of things. So we're kind of working out right now with their office what the best course of action is, especially since we're in an election year and we're trying to move things along a little more quickly at the moment. So what's next with the bill? Right now, we're looking to get a score from the Congressional Budget Office. This is kind of a fiscal analysis that shows legislators what the bill's budgetary impacts will be. We're working with CBO to get this score. We're hopeful that the fiscal analysis, the independent one that I referred to earlier, will be helpful in demonstrating the need for the bill and to help move things along. But that's kind of coming up shortly. Hopefully, what will happen is we get that score. It's a positive score, like it's a helpful one for us. And then we can take that to the committees of jurisdiction for the bill, say, hey, this bill saves Medicare a ton of money, so we should get it on the docket for a hearing. And so that will be the next step, is to get the bill heard and what's called marked up, where it's deliberated on, there are potential amendments added if folks are interested in making slight changes to the bill. That's one option. There's another option as well, which is an attachment to what's known as a legislative vehicle. These are must-pass spending bills. And there's, for example, there was a tax bill that's being heard right now. And there are a few different kind of special interest groups that are trying to attach tax-related bills to that vehicle. And in order to kind of get it through as an add-on, essentially. This is more common nowadays than it was before, due to kind of the polarization of Congress that's happening right now. So that's definitely something that we're looking into as a possibility for HR 4315. So this is the usual plug that I do during Advocacy in Action, but I have a QR code here for a website called AOPAvotes.org. If you go to this website and you put in your name into this kind of form on the right here, the system will determine who your legislator is, and then you'll be able to send a template email to them, essentially asking for their support. And we've had about 500 to 600 people do this so far during the 118th Congress, and we'd like to have as much support as possible, as many letters being sent as possible. So be sure to spread the word about, AOPA votes. Send in a letter yourself. Would really appreciate it. So essentially, that is the bill and where it's at and where it's going. Cheryl, I don't know if you have any specific questions about the bill, but definitely happy to answer anything you have.
No, I don't. This was a really, really good synopsis. I appreciate it.
Awesome.
It's nice to see how it's moving through and the momentum it's gaining, and there's some good cost savings there. I always like to see that.
Yeah.
No, and having compliance since 1875 or thereabouts, it's nice to see the fraud, waste, and abuse savings too, potentially, with carving out the drop shipping thing with the custom, because that's ridiculous. We should. That's just ridiculous. That's all I've got. Ridiculous.
No, yeah, you hear about different stings by the DOJ every couple of months about this amount of millions of dollars or this amount of billions of dollars of these drop shipping schemes, and I think it's a win-win for everyone. This bill helps get access to patients and it saves the government money. So there's really no downside.
Yeah, at least not that we can see. There's there's a bureaucracy, but it sounds like we're doing some good work on our side. So good to hear. I appreciate it.
No problem. No problem at all. I think that was like kind of the first section of the kind of presentation aspect of things. I wanted to see what the group's thoughts are about essentially what we're looking to do is find a more effective way to share federal updates like this. Um, at the at the state level, AOPA has things like the co-op. We have state policy forecast every
Right.
month, state by state, all these different kind of ways to show what's going on at the state level. But we don't have at the moment a very kind of regularly scheduled way to share federal updates in the
Mhm.
same manner. And I don't know, Cheryl, if you have any thoughts on what would be helpful for you to learn about kind of what's going on in Capitol Hill regarding O&P, but would definitely be happy to take those into consideration.
This is great, and I saw that you're recording this. So where would I direct somebody or find this? Because being on the West Coast, when people are driving things on the East Coast time, sometimes I've passed up, not necessarily with you all, but I've passed up a lot of opportunities that would be 5 a.m. or 6 a.m. my time. So
Yeah.
do you have a I don't know, a YouTube station or somewhere that these
Um,
get posted?
we do have a YouTube page, and I believe these are also shared on the AOPA website as well.
Okay, okay, because that's always
Mhm.
nice to be able to hit the on demand aspect and go back and review it. Even if you see it live, go back and review it, and you know,
And I think something we're thinking about a more um, what's the word? Asynchronous kind of
oh,
format, just for that exact reason. I think,
yeah,
like, today it really depends on month to month on who's able to join a live webinar. So
right,
we've, wanted to make sure that everybody can get this information instead of maybe coming across it on the website or on the YouTube page. I think being able to make it asynchronously and, blast it out to our membership, on
right.
social media, emails, that's been a lot. We've had a lot of success with that for things like the state policy forecast. So that's definitely.
Current role is in specifically compliance communications with Hanger, and I go through the same thing. It's we're going to do a webinar on a subject that you all have been begging and pleading for, and out of 6,000 employees, we have 60 show up. You know, we've
Hmm.
got four or five, me moderating, four people on a panel, and 60 attendees, and it's really really disappointing. So I don't know. I was actually reading about podcasting, as an internal communications vehicle this morning, and I just don't really see the difference between doing this and podcasting, um,
Yeah.
in terms of it feels like the same experience for me, especially if it's a go back and listen to something that's been recorded. But that seems to be the trend. I just wasn't able to dig deep enough this morning to figure out, you know, why is that trending as a communications vehicle rather than doing this a Zoom call, or especially if they're recorded and you can go back if you can't hit the time where it's live. So
Hmm.
I am constantly struggling with how to get people to pay attention to important messages and not complain when they miss the 57 opportunities we've given them. So, um,
Yeah.
gosh, I wish I had some words of wisdom to throw at you or you at me, but it sounds like we're kind of in the same boat.
No, no, that's really. I think that the podcast notion is a great point because I know that if I need to like do the dishes or do some laundry, like I'm putting on a podcast and just listening while I do that, and that might be a more accessible way to learn this information than
Yeah,
would be in, if you feel like you need to join a live session and be there and, you know, have to participate or not participate depending on the
right.
situation.
So,
That's a
okay, for what that's worth. Yeah.
Yeah. No, I think that's a really great suggestion. That's I had a feeling that's what was kind of that was what we were thinking about as well, like the asynchronous, um, more of a presentation style than a live webinar. So
Right, right. And podcasts
validating.
give you that, you feel a little more accessible and a little more casual sometimes, and you're still able to impart the same information. For some reason, especially if you've got two people kind of exchanging ideas or appearing to even exchange ideas, even though if it's kind of scripted, It just comes off as more accessible, I think.
Hmm. That's true. That's very, very true. Yeah, and I think it allows people to, people can kind of write in, or there can be kind of asynchronous participation in other
Right,
ways. It could be
right.
giveaways, or you know, question times, or things like that, like Q&As. Like, yeah, I like that.
Tuning in live, we'll have somebody moderating and looking at comments, and we'll lob, I think it's really difficult to be the speaker and or the presenter and try to keep up with comments. But if you have somebody moderating and throwing those at you or helping you out with those, just so you're not trying to read and speak and think and
Yeah.
everything. I don't know. Maybe you can do it. I've hit the age that I cannot any longer.
No, it's tough. It's tough. I definitely get that. Yeah, I need to, it's like tapping your head and like rubbing your stomach, that one of those types of things.
Walking. Yeah.
Exactly. But hey, Cheryl, I really appreciate your insights, and I think that's the podcast concept is something that I want to look into more, and I appreciate you taking the time to stop by. I know it's not a full room exactly, but I hope you got some good information.
No, I did, and I appreciate it. And I appreciate you guys, or you forging ahead in spite of the fact that you had an audience of one. So,
Hey, the show must go on.
all righty. Well, thanks. And, next time something pops up from, in terms of advocacy, I will hop on and see what's happening. But I appreciate it.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
Bye
Appreciate
bye.
it.